All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Councillor Glenn Gower, and I want to welcome everyone to tonight's information meeting about the proposed development at the corner of Hazeldean and Savage. There's a map there on the screen showing the location. I know there's a ton of community interest in this, so I really want to thank residents who've taken the time to join us this evening and to participate. I'll introduce you to the developer team in just a moment, but first I want to go over an agenda for what's going to be covered in tonight's meeting. So this is about a proposed development at Hazeldean and Savage. There's 3 separate properties on Hazeldean Road and 1 property on Savage Drive. So tonight we're going to have a presentation from the developers team, but the bulk of the meeting will be an opportunity for residents to ask questions and get more information about this development. So when we get to that Q&A section, there's a few ways that you can participate. If you have a question or comment, you can raise your hand using Teams, and we can give you the microphone to ask the question directly. Or if you're more comfortable, you can type in your question on the Q&A panel that's on the screen. And Kara from my office is helping to compile the questions, and I'll read out those questions on your behalf to the developer team so that they can answer those. We're going to answer as many questions as we can during the time that we have. We also have some questions that were submitted by residents beforehand that we'll also include. And then any comments we receive either through this presentation or offline, we'll be compiling that and sharing it with the applicant team, developer team as well. We are recording this, so a video will be posted to my YouTube channel after the meeting, which will also be available on my website, glenngower.ca. And at any time, if after today's meeting, if you have any questions or comments, you can contact me by emails, usually the fastest way to reach me, at glenn.gower@ottawa.ca. Now, before I hand it off to the applicant for presentation, I just wanted to set the context in which we're having this meeting. So this application or this proposal has not been formally submitted to city staff. They have done what's called some pre-consultation, and I think they're going to describe that in the presentation. I met with the group in July and suggested that we hold this meeting so that they could share these early plans with residents, gather feedback before they make their formal presentation to the city. When we met back in July, I did raise concerns about traffic, especially the Savage Hazeldean entrance, and also concern that the community has in general around height and around infrastructure, around amenities, and so on. These are things that we often hear when we have new development proposals. So we've shared the information about this meeting through my website and through my email newsletter that goes out to about 11,000 people. And also we did a flyer drop to mailboxes within the Amberway community. So that's likely how many of you heard about this tonight. If, I suppose, when or if the applicant decides to submit, there's a few steps in the process. There's actually more steps than this, but these are the major ones. There would have to be a zoning bylaw application, so that would go under review. Staff would analyze it, and a recommendation would come to Planning Committee and Council. It's 90 days for that zoning review and decision to take place. And there's also a site plan that's required that has a 60-day deadline for that. A site plan used to be City Council was able to decide on that, but the province removed that ability from City Council, and now it's done by staff. And after City's decision, there's also an appeal period. There's no resident appeal on that, but if the city were to reject the application, the applicant could appeal it. But again, the province removed resident ability or community association ability to appeal to the land tribunal for any council decision. So it's a bit of a change. If you've joined us for one of these meetings in the last few years, these are changes that have happened over the last 2-3 years or so. Quite a change to the process, basically designed from the provincial level to accelerate the approval and review process for new development. Anyhow, I will leave it there, and I'm going to pass it over to Jillian from the developer team. And Jillian, I'll let you introduce who's here with you and walk us through the presentation. Welcome.
Great. Thank you very much, Councillor Gower. I will share my screen. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for attending tonight's public information meeting. My name is Jillian Henderson, a planner with FO10, and I'll be providing a brief presentation and overview of the policy and regulatory framework for this project. I'm also joined by my colleagues Tyler Yakuchuk and Brian Casagrande from FO10, as well as Roberto Campos, Kaylee Jeffrey from Figure Architects, and Juan Lavin, our transportation engineer. I'll start with a quick overview of the project timeline. So as Councillor Gower mentioned, back in October of 2024, the applicant team met with city staff for a pre-consultation to go over the project and clarify the application requirements and next steps. Then in February of 2025, we presented the proposal to the Urban Design Review panel for feedback on the design, which was then incorporated into the next architectural iterations. In early July, we informed Councillor Gower about the project and met with him to discuss the application. Today, August 6th, we're holding the first public information meeting to share information, hear your feedback, and answer any questions. And finally, we'll be planning to submit the application later this month. The subject property is located at the southeast corner of Hazeldean Road and Savage Drive intersection and is comprised of 5872, 5880, and 5884 Hazeldean Road, as well as 7 Savage Drive within the Stittsville neighborhood. The front portion of the subject property is currently occupied by an automobile dealership, while 7 Savage Drive is occupied by a single-story detached dwelling. Apologies. Full screen again. Thank you. The subject site is fairly well connected to the existing transportation network. Hazeldean Road is a transit priority corridor, which are routes that are intended to support higher capacity and more efficient transit service. Nearby bus routes include frequent buses 61 and number 62, as well as connection bus routes 266, 263, and 261. Additionally, the future Hazeldean LRT station is approximately 1.2 kilometers to the east of the subject site. The subject property benefits from its location at the corner of Savage Drive, which is classified as a local road, and Hazeldean Road, which is classified as an arterial road. Approximately 2.5 kilometers to the east, Terry Fox Drive runs north-south and connects to Highway 417 via both eastbound and westbound ramps. This location supports efficient vehicle movement throughout the neighborhood and within the wider region. The subject site has reasonable access and connectivity to the local active transportation network. Hazeldean Road includes bike lanes in both directions, which connect to other cycling routes along Iber Road and Terry Fox Drive. The nearby Carleton Place rail corridor, along with pathways through the surrounding neighborhood, also help create a well-connected system. Looking ahead, the Transportation Master Plan includes further improvements, including additions to the crosstown bike network, which will further strengthen cycling connections and contribute to a more cohesive active transportation network overall. Schedule A of the official plan divides the city into 6 policy areas known as transects. Each transect reflects a different stage of the city's built form and planned function, ranging from the most urban areas to the most rural. The subject property is located in the suburban west transect, which is an area intended to evolve from a very conventional suburban model into a 15-minute neighborhood. High-rise development is permitted along Main Street corridors within the suburban transect, and higher density mixed-use buildings are encouraged at strategic locations close to rapid transit. The subject site is designated Main Street Corridor within the suburban transect. Main Street corridors shall provide a dense mixed-use environment with active entrances facing the corridor. Building heights up to 40 stories are permitted along Main Street corridors whose right-of-way is 30 meters or greater. And this segment of Hazeldean Road has a right-of-way greater than 30 meters. The proposed development aligns with the current and planned context of the area, which envisions a dense mixed-use environment along Main Street corridors with heights of up to 40 stories where appropriate. This 3D massing model illustrates how the property fits within the evolving context based on existing policies. However, it's important to note that this will not happen overnight, and this is a very long-term view of what may occur over the course of decades of gradual evolution. Additionally, the properties shown in this image may not develop as depicted in these renderings, and these models illustrate potential built form under current policy and demonstrate how the proposed development fits within the planned and emerging context of the area. The subject site is currently split-zoned general mixed use, subzone 14, with a height suffix of 11 meters, and residential first density, subzone D. The GM zone permits mixed-use development, including residential, commercial, and institutional uses, generally serving a broader area and allowing for larger occupancies, provided that potential impacts like traffic and noise are appropriately mitigated. The entirety of the subject property is proposed to be rezoned GM with an urban exception. The amendments required to permit the proposed development are high-rise development, increased floor space index, reduced rear yard setback, and reduced minimum required resident, retail, and visitor parking spaces. Under the draft new zoning bylaw, the subject site is split-zoned Main Street corridor, Main Street Zone 2, height suffix 11 meters, and Neighborhood Zone 2, subzone D. The Main Street Zone 2 will largely function as the updated version of the arterial Main Street zone from the current zoning bylaw. It allows for a broad mix of uses along wider main streets with larger lot sizes, including high-rise development, where it fits the surrounding context and also aligns with official plan policies. The proposed height is supported by the site's location along a Main Street corridor, as well as the generous lot depth and area of this particular site, which make it suitable for high-rise development. A strong built form transition is achieved through a low-rise podium, strategic tower placement, and wide surrounding rights-of-ways, which provide ample separation from nearby properties. The planned context of the area anticipates high-rise buildings of up to 40 stories along main streets in line with official plan policies. Additionally, from an urban design perspective, the building uses a tower floor plate of under 750 square meters to minimize shadow impacts, and the tower's orientation helps preserve views and privacy. The low-rise podium also enhances the pedestrian experience at the street level. Furthermore, the proposal transforms an underutilized brownfield site into a vibrant mixed-use development that aligns with the city's vision for intensification along Main Street. That concludes the overview of the policy framework. Thank you very much for your attention, and now I'll hand it over to the architect team to present the proposed development.
Thanks, Jillian, and thank you everyone for coming here tonight. We view these sessions as very informative to allow us to get feedback. We've already also presented to the Urban Design Review Panel and received feedback from them, of which many of the aspects of the proposal tonight have been incorporated. As mentioned, the proposed site is located with 2 properties along Hazeldean Road and one at the rear of those properties at 7 Savage. Next slide, please. Here are some photos. As mentioned, the current use of the property is a car dealership and a single-family home at 7 Savage. Immediately, I guess, would be northeast is another kind of industrial type used lot that includes a collision repair and also a granite supply store. You can see some photos here of the views, along Hazeldean Road, and then the bottom two kind of looking down Savage. Next slide. So the proposal envisions in total 3 buildings. What we're calling is Building A at the very intersection of Savage Drive and Hazeldean. This will be a 19-story. This is proposed to be a 19-story building. Again, as Jillian had mentioned, sitting on top of 4-story podium. Building B, which is immediately to the right of that, is proposed to be a 25-story building, again, also sitting on a 4-story building. And the idea of these 2 buildings was almost a bit of a mirror and reflection of each other, with this, I guess, public plaza garden park space that really links those 2 buildings together. What we also then placed was a building C, which is a 4-story building, pretty much where the 7 Savage property would be. And this helps to create a transition of the massing between the existing neighborhood immediately to the south, and as we transition north towards Hazeldean Road. Some of the things that we really tried to do was address some of the potential traffic or cut-throughs in and out of this property. And so the idea would be that all vehicular traffic would flow off of Savage through this private access that would connect the 3 buildings together, provide drop-offs for the 3 buildings, access to an underground parking garage ramp, which would be located at building B at the very far right. And then as well as a major drop-off for some visitors, 4 visitor parking spots, and drop-off for use as well. Both buildings envision having a move-in rooms that is also immediately accessed through these roads. Part of the strategy that we employed was to minimize or eliminate actually entirely any exit onto Hazeldean from this property. And so what you see basically on the top right corner of the property is a pavered area. And this would be specifically used on a daily basis by the tenants, but can be used by emergency vehicles and or garbage removal. And they are allowed to basically exit along Hazeldean Road on a right out. And so the idea is that there would be a gated condition there in order to ensure that no vehicles can actually cut through themselves. Anybody coming to the property and exiting the property would then have to turn right onto Savage and then immediately either left or right onto Hazeldean. There is no real through use in Savage, so the idea of people cutting through the neighborhood is pretty much non-existent. And so this was again part of the strategy in the overall site planning. As mentioned, there is right-of-ways and hydro lines that ultimately determine the placement of the buildings along Hazeldean. But as we start going through the plans in a little bit, we'll start to see how some of the programs really work. The idea is that the ground floor facing Hazeldean is predominantly either retail or very active uses and or entrances. Can we go next slide? So this is a view looking down Hazeldean. I guess we'd be looking, if I see my orientation, would be about looking northeast as Hazeldean works its way there to you see the intersection of Savage right there. Again, the idea is to have a very transparent ground plane and then a pedestrian, more urban podium level before the beginnings of the high rises above. Next slide. This is a view looking down Savage. Again, part of the placement strategy was always to keep the thinner sides of the buildings looking towards the established neighborhoods, and as well as making sure that we met the requirements for high building guidelines with regards to tower separations, not only from each other on the property, but also to neighboring properties that will look to development into the future. Next slide. Yeah, so looking now towards the properties directly on Hazeldean, and then the visibility of that public park space that can be either used by the tenants or potential visitors to the ground floor units. Next slide. View inside that kind of connecting knuckle park space, showing the ability of trying to get as many trees and green space into the space. Because there is a parking garage below, the trees would be placed in raised planters in order to ensure that the parking spaces below can actually work properly. But the idea was always the intention of trying to provide as much green space and park space as much as possible on this lot. Next slide. Some early conceptual kind of sketches that looking at that kind of knuckle space. Oh, sorry, I think we lost the presentation there. Can we get that back, or do you need me to share?
Sorry, 1 second, Roberto. I'm technical issue. Don't know what happened, but I'm sharing again. Thank you.
Worries. Yeah, again, always looking at how we can try to create this I guess connector between the two buildings. Do you need me to share the slides if you need, Jillian? Oh, no problem.
Sure. Why don't you take over, Roberto?
Okay.
Sorry, it's
No worries. Let me just give me 2 seconds here. I'm just going to get to that slide before I start. Hopefully everybody can see the screen.
We can, yeah.
Okay. All right, just gotta move some things here. We'll run quickly through some of the planning. Obviously, we tried to take advantage of the limits of the lot in order to try to generate as much parking as we possibly could onto 2 levels. I believe we're proposing a total of about just about 230, 240 cars in that range. There's a total of 456 units in total between the 3 buildings. Again, so here's a bit of a plan that shows the ground floor conditions of the buildings and how they start to interact with the streets and or that interior plaza space. So again, what you're seeing in blue is commercial or more active uses, whether it's community uses or even could be back to amenity spaces by the building. The purple is proposed amenities. Again, the idea of using those amenities to view out onto that plaza as much as possible. The ground floor of building A, the main entrance to the residence would be off the Savage from a pedestrian perspective, and then would transition actually to units that are ground floor oriented units, so people can actually access their ground floor through those units. Building B again has commercial facing Hazeldean with a main entrance to the building at this point, As we had mentioned, this area here would be potentially used by the tenancy, but no vehicle cars can actually come this way. They would be blocked from following this route, and only emergency vehicles and garbage removal. This is access to the parking ramp. I hope everybody can see the hand moving a little bit. A couple of move-in rooms. This is the turnaround drop-off area that allows people to drop off visitors to the building, or for things like Uber or Uber Eats, pizza delivery, taxis, whatever. And then an ability to, again, come back out and then onto Savage and to where people need to go. Some of the upper floors of the podium. And then the 5th floor that shows, again, some interior amenity space, and then bleeding out into terraced amenity that it would not really be facing any of the neighborhood, but really that interior courtyard. And then as the buildings start to go up. Some sections. And a section looking northeast on against Hazeldean. Again, we do have a right-of-way line that's here, but at the end of really what's dictating facade location is the hydro. There is hydro power lines here, and hydro has very, very strict setback requirements that we must provide. And then at that point, we do have building setbacks in order to generate that 4-level podium. And a quick snapshot of the shadows. As part of the submission, we did do a comprehensive shadow analysis that looked at multiple days, multiple times during those days. Normally these studies take about 45 to 50 pages long. This is just a quick synopsis of 3 of the key dates. So basically June 21st, so the highest sun, September 21st, which is kind of the middle range, and then December 21st, which is the lowest sun. And you can really kind of see how the buildings themselves throughout the year really cast most of their shadows towards Hazeldean or onto its own property or onto the neighboring industrial lot that's over to the northeast, really, or to the east over here. And then same thing along during the intermediate months, and then into the longer shadows. And again, this is, at this point, this is 9 a.m. in the morning, where it's, the sun is just kind of getting up. December 21st, so right around high noon, yes, casting shadow towards across the street, but by around 3 o'clock on December 21st, we're really getting close to daylight really kind of no longer being available to us. And that's the presentation.
Okay, thank you. That's a lot of information.
Yes.
A lot of information. Keep the slides handy because it may be helpful to go back to them as we go. And we've already had quite a few questions coming in. So once again, if you have a question this evening, you can raise your hand and we can give you the mic to ask your question directly to the developer here and the team, or you can use the Q&A panel and we'll be watching for questions there. There's some duplicate questions coming in, which is fine. We're going to try to consolidate. If there's a couple of very similar questions, we'll try to ask them kind of in one go. So I already see some hands up and I already see some questions coming in. Just one of the things we've had a lot of concerns about is traffic impact. So a question from S&J on traffic. Will there be another traffic light at Hazeldean and Savage?
We will certainly let Juan answer that question.
Yeah, I can definitely answer that. So
My name is Juan Levin. I'm from Parsons. I'm doing the traffic analysis. From the question for traffic signals, I can't speak for the city directly as this has not been publicly posted to the city yet, but we forecast that it's going to be very unlikely. There's a few reasons for that. So the Victor Hazeldean intersection is currently signalized, and that is less than 200 meters away from this axis. General engineering standards and guidelines recommend that there's at least 200-meter separation. So for that reason, it's unlikely. We did a traffic signal warrant as well using the City of Ottawa guideline, and it did not meet the warrant either. That's based on traffic volumes. We also did a bit of modeling as well, and it's forecasted to operate quite well based on capacity, delay, and queue perspectives. So we don't foresee the need for traffic signal for that reason. And then lastly, based on all those things that I've kind of mentioned, so the traffic volumes, the operations, the distance from the nearest signalized intersection, it's much more likelier that Sweetham Drive would be a better candidate for a traffic signal. So again, to reiterate, we do not foresee a traffic signal at this location at this time.
Okay, and Juan, I know you mentioned this off the beginning of your answer, but this hasn't been evaluated by the City of Ottawa Traffic, so that's not a final answer, but it's what the developers' evaluation has been so far. Definitely Savage and Hazeldean is currently a problem point, and I think it will be in the future as well. On the same theme of traffic safety, Trish asks, the current layout of the entrance of Savage Drive is dangerous due to the curve and width. Did you plan for this as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. We did use engineering standards and traffic calming toolbox to best design this axis. So first and foremost, there is a required protected clear space or a corner triangle that's required, and this to provide adequate sight lines. So on the site plan that you saw previously, you'll see that the buildings are set back a certain distance so that you provide a nice clear view for vehicles coming from both directions as vehicles are entering or leaving the axis. We designed the axis so that it would enter at a 90-degree to Savage Drive, so this improves visibility for drivers. And it also provides a much tighter turning radius, which slows down the speeds for vehicles doing these movements. The axis has been also narrowed, so again, it's another tool from the traffic calming, which also slows down vehicles and reduces the speed, so allows more time for people to react and see what's going on. And lastly, Savage Drive is posted 40 kilometers an hour today. The axis is located fairly close to the inlet, so the Hazeldean and Savage intersection. So vehicles aren't expected to be driving very fast when they reach this axis as well. So that's another point to consider. So all in all, we're following the industry standards, and the axis will consider all those things.
What about sidewalks along Savage, either in front of the building or both sides? What's being proposed or what's required?
Yep. So we will also follow the City of Ottawa standards. So 2-meter width is a minimum. We will follow the city standards for crossing a sidewalk through the axis. This is again to ensure priority for pedestrians and to provide good visibility for pedestrians and cyclists as they cross the axis.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go to someone with their hand up. Leanne is first on the list. So Leanne, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. It's actually Russell Gerard.
Russell. Welcome, Russell.
So first comment, your slide 9 looks like Mississauga, to be quite frank. And for one, I'd invite you to take a look at Victor Street for what calming measures are, you know, how they were implemented in the past. Didn't work. I'm not sure it worked particularly well. But the real question I have is, with a multi-level tower being planned for CARP, as well as one in Blackstone, as well as these, what are the infrastructure capacities of the water tower that we have today? And what has been planned for the fire station to be able to service similar types of buildings? And I have a whole list of questions, but other people have questions, so I'll just write them.
Yeah, thank you, Russell. On the water capacity, can someone answer that or address that?
Sure, I can take that. Hi again, Tyler Yakshak from FOTEN. So as part
Sorry,
of any,
just also
Yeah.
discuss sewage, because there's a lot more units
Water
too
and
that we're going to
sewage.
be flushing.
yeah, that would be covered in my response anyway. So as part of any application, there is a civil engineering requirement to look at all things servicing, both in terms of, like I said, sewage, in terms of water capacity, and stormwater management, flows on and off the site, these sorts of things, which are undertaken by a consultant by the developer team, but of course reviewed by city staff, just so that they meet the terms of reference, those kinds of things. And thus far, as we keep saying, we have yet to submit, but from the studies that we've gotten about servicing the area, there is enough capacity to theoretically meet the amount or the demand for the amount of units we're looking to propose.
Has that considered the existing offerings that are already accepted and planned, like the corner of Carp and Lipin down in Blackstone?
Yeah, as part of any of these studies, they have to take into consideration any active development applications or recently approved ones, such as the ones you just mentioned.
Russell, on the fire safety question, it's a good question, and it came up last year around the 6310 Hazeldean. We actually got a formal response from the fire chief, Chief Hutt, who gave an answer about how the city plans for high-rise buildings and just overall the safety approach to taller buildings across the city, including Stittsville. If you go to my website and search for fire safety, the actual title of the article is Fire Safety and High-Rise Buildings, and there's quite a bit of background there on what they currently do and what they are doing to plan for as Ottawa continues to grow, and certainly we get taller buildings in Canada and Stittsville. So I hope that will answer your questions there. Thank you, Russell, for your questions. Going to go back to our Q&A. On affordability, Tricia asks, how affordable will these units be? And Georgie asks, what percentage of the units will be designated affordable? Can anyone comment on those?
I think I can take that one on again. So at the moment, this is strictly a zoning bylaw amendment application that we're looking to submit in the near future. Any talk about, let's say, affordable units or affordability generally is something that we typically look at the site plan control phase. So at the moment, it's a bit of a to be determined once the evolution of both the proposal and eventual site plan control application go in.
Okay, but it is a private building. It's not a nonprofit or community housing.
That's correct.
It's a private build.
It is a market rate building. That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I see Bill has his hand up. So Bill, you should be able to unmute and ask your question. Bill? Bill, we'll try coming back to you. The next person with the hand up is HH. So HH,
Hi,
if you
yes.
can unmute. Hi.
Hi. So my name's Heather.
Heather,
I am
hi.
actually impressed with the aesthetic appeal of the buildings. I'm in full support of the location based on the major bus routes. My concern, if I heard correctly, there was going to be roughly, give or take, 400 units and only 200 some odd parking spots and 4 visitor parking. That's a little bit absurd. I think, Mr. Gower, the city does need to review this policy, because where are the additional visitors for holidays going to be parking the delivery drivers for various services, and the patrons for the businesses on the bottom, especially if there's going to be any type of medical clinics or, shopping, anything that takes time versus just 5 minutes. Where are they going to park in order to give these businesses business, as well as the employees for the buildings? So what is the actual revised plan for parking? Because to have less than half parking available is absurd.
Thanks, Heather. Yeah, so to the applicant team, if you can confirm again the parking numbers and unit numbers and any comments to address Heather's question.
Yeah. Okay, so just to provide a little bit of clarity, the parking that is on the surface is just the surface visitor parking. There is planned for, I believe, over 80 parking spots for visitors in the building below ground. Now, whether that all gets used, hard to say at one time, but it's not just for. Absolutely, the question about or the concern about ground floor retail, always a bit of a challenge. And the reality is that bricks and mortars is struggling right now. All new bricks and mortars is struggling, even if they had parking, right? And so, one of the approaches that we often take is to try to look at alternative ground floor approaches, right? Again, whether it's active amenity spaces or community support spaces. This is actually something we even looked at on another project not too far from here. Certainly, understand the concerns with that. We certainly have concerns with the idea of even just brick and mortars surviving in these ground floor areas. I know that it's always been the long-term vision of the city to try to create these more active urban ground planes, but it's been tough. It's just been very tough in the market, for years. The idea is that hopefully they do get better, but if they don't, we will be looking at other alternative solutions to try to at least create that active experience at the ground plane.
And then Roberta, what's the total number of parking spaces for residents that's being proposed right now?
I believe right now we're showing 148, and that's on 2 parking levels.
Okay. And the unit count was 456?
456. Now, I think it's also really important to also understand that this isn't going to happen, as you mentioned before, as Jillian mentioned before, overnight. This is something that would happen likely over a decade, the reality, right? And so the goal ultimately too is to look at how does other aspects like public transit ultimately contribute to how we respond to these types of projects. This is not going to be 456 units dropping in 2027. It's just not going to happen. It takes a long time to get these projects approved. It takes a long time to prepare the projects to be developed, designed, permitted, tendered, financed. It takes a long time, and ultimately to build. Even the 19. It's a minimum 2 years plus of construction before anything, and that's just from the moment they start construction to topping out. And so it is. This is not an immediate, all of a sudden, a significant amount of density that just gets dropped in a year or two. This is a long process.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So,
I don't think you
sorry,
have a market. Go ahead. I'll let you go, Heather. I'll comment after. Go
sorry.
ahead.
So is there room in the development in the plan in order to actually build additional levels of parking? Because doing the calculations, that's still only a third of possible parking available for the units. Is there the ability to actually go down, as opposed to just 2 or 3 levels, to go down to 5 or 6 levels of underground parking?
So certainly the question of parking demand is always going to also be a bit of a market aspect. Like the challenge when you go once you get into that 3, 4, 5 stories of underground parking, it becomes incredibly expensive and almost non-feasible at all to do that. It's just very, very difficult. Will it ultimately be a potential option for the developers into the future if that's what's needed? It's certainly something that they will look at.
Heather, thanks for your question. There's a few other questions related to parking. Some of them I think the team's answered through the presentation and in answering your questions. So S&J, Shannon, and Gord, I think your questions have been covered. There's a question from Lloyd just clarifying where the underground parking is located. Is it below building B, or maybe bring up the map again, Roberta, where the underground parking is actually planned?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here, I'm just gonna move a couple of things here. So I'll actually go back to, it just kind of stalled a little second there. So we'll start actually with the ground floor. So again, people would access the site through this road. Again, if you're a quick visitor, there's 4 spots that are available right here, as well as what we call a lay-by drop-off here. But people to access the underground actually come this way and then underground to a ramp that brings you down. Wrong way. Here, so there's the ramp right here, which brings you down. And as you can see, the dashed line that you're seeing all the way around here is the property line. Now, what we can't build is in the right of way into the future. That ultimately, the right of way ultimately really becomes a new de facto property line, because the idea is that as the city updates Hazeldean into the future, that area of land is allowed to be used by the city to update what they need to update, whether it's to provide additional mass transit, tree lanes, bike lanes, updated sidewalks, whatever they feel is an important to the long-term vision of Hazeldean Road. And so, as you can see here, we have to limit our ability to build to that point. And then ultimately, we've built pretty much as far as we felt we could build onto the site. It's encompassing, I would say, 90% of the property below ground is a parking garage. And so basically we would just provide a second level and again, provide whatever we needed on this. So this is the P1 level, this is P2. So on the P1 level, you'll also see garbage rooms. So garbage gets collected directly in the buildings, either through building C, B, and A. They have their own garbage rooms. Ultimately, the owners of the building would have to require on the day of garbage pickup also to haul those bins out ready for pickup. But that's all part of the parking garage experience.
Okay.
So it's not just under one building, it's under almost the entire property.
Okay. That clarifies it. Couple more questions about parking. They're both about Savage Drive. There's Debbie asking about parking restrictions on Savage Drive, and Lucas around on-street parking on Savage for commercial. I think I can answer those quickly. So on-street parking for commercial is possible. It would have to meet city requirements in terms of safety and sight lines. So to be determined on that. The city would have to evaluate that. In terms of parking restrictions on Savage, because I understand there's a concern that there would be overflow parking onto Savage. The city does have a process to look at parking restrictions. Similar example that's actually over on Victor Street, where there was a resident-led petition process to restrict parking on one side of Victor. It would happen during the construction of the new townhomes at Hazeldean and Victor. So there is a process the city follows. It may not surprise people to know that parking is really controversial. There's some residents who would like more on-street parking, some residents who would like less on-street parking, and so the city has a petition process that that we follow to gauge resident feedback on that. Okay, I want to try to go to Bill. Bill, if you're able to unmute, we can go to you next. Or I see your hands back down, Bill. Okay, well, Bill, if you can unmute, we will try to go to you. Bill Gale. I can see you speaking, Bill, but you're not unmuted. And I can't unmute it for you, unfortunately. Maybe try the Q&A panel and we'll look for your question there. And I'm sorry we're not able to get your mic activated there. Let's go to Devin, who's the next person with the hand up. Devin, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, hello.
Hi there.
Like all my friends that live near the area, and they're kind of like mad, upset, worried, you know. So like I guess would say like like stop the Stittsville skyscrapers. Would want 8 stories, not 22 stories. It's bad for business. Oh, I forgot to mention like I'm a store owner in Stittsville, Devin's Hin Shop or whatever. Like because I talked to all the business owners in the community, they're saying it's bad for business. Like business owners speak to me all the time. Homeowners, church groups are telling me this is unacceptable. They're saying it in my store. They're saying it on Facebook. And
Just missed the last part of what you said, Devin. Your audio cut out.
So like they're saying like I have a store in Stittsville.
Yeah.
And I'm plugged into the business community and stuff. And in the last 2 days, like people are caught unaware. They're saying like stop the Stittsville skyscrapers. Like the senior residences on Hazeldean. They really like the height of those, like those wonderful like 8-9 story kind of like brick wonderful buildings, and they're saying like 22 stories would be too high for they're saying it's bad for business. Like I'm hearing this from business owners, homeowners, and church groups, which a bunch of people who usually never talk to me from the business community and the flea market. And I'm hearing it from all corners. Would urge you to probably pick up the phone and listen to people from the Amberwood community, especially. And there's numerous concerns. So they're saying they did like 9 stories instead of like 8-9 stories, like the senior building instead of 22 stories. Like lots of people were upset at the counselor. I was saying like don't be upset at the counselor. Like we should encourage polite civil discussion and try to convince, not attack, and stuff like that. So the 8 stories, not 22 stories. The people were wondering about parks. They want parks around it. Where are these children going to play? Stuff like that. So thank you for having this wonderful meeting. They were also saying they would love a discussion about this in the John E. LaRue arena. I was hearing from 4 different business owners, like big business owners, like much bigger than me. Were saying that to me, and they were saying bad for business, like because my small shop, everybody, as business owners, like to visit homeowners and stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Devin. You've covered a lot there. I wanted to pick up on one thing in particular. Thank you for all the comments, but you mentioned parks, and I know we've had a couple questions come in about park and green space. Gord and Phil both had questions around that. Gord asked, what will happen with the money the developer has to provide the city for park development? And then Phil asked, would the parkland requirements for cash in lieu of parkland permit the development to provide facilities to the municipally owned parkland nearby on Savage Street. So maybe does the applicant team, can you comment on that cash in lieu of parkland, or if there's any parkland being conveyed to the city as part of this development? Let's start there.
Would it be possible to just mention like if they're going to build like a 9-story building with so many people, they have to build a park. There was a development earlier. They didn't build a park, and
Yeah.
the developer didn't. And I think in one of your community posts that are wonderful updates for the whole community, you were saying that like you had to ask for donations from business owners for building the park, and we would like the developers to build a park.
Okay, thanks, Devin. So can someone from the applicant comment on what's required around parkland for this development?
Sure. So the parkland dedication bylaws per the city requires either the applicant to provide 10% of the property for high-rise development such as this to be dedicated to parkland. And it is in fact the city's preferred preference to take land first. And in the event that they decide that the site isn't suitable or that it's not ideally located for a park or of sufficient size, at that point they would request cash in lieu, which is up to the value of 10% of the property itself.
And in the pre-consultation that's been done, has the city stated a preference one way or the other for property or for cash?
I believe it was for cash in lieu, given the location was not ideal for a small parkette that would be provided with the amount of 10% area of the property.
Okay. And then what cash in lieu? So Tyler mentioned it's the equivalent of 10% of the property value. That money gets distributed. I believe it's 40% goes into a citywide fund, and then 60% goes into a ward fund. And then the ward fund can be used to acquire new park property, or to upgrade existing parks. So a park like the Amberway Park that runs from Savage Drive over to Denham could be a qualifying park where cash in lieu funding could be used to upgrade that park. So that's definitely a possibility there. Thanks again, Devin, for your comments and your question. I want to try going to Christine. Well, it says Christine, but I don't think it's Christine on the screen.
Okay, no, it's not. No, my name is Martin. I'm Chris's husband.
Hi, Martin.
Yeah. So, God, there's so many things to talk about. As far as parkland, there was just the one part. First of all, I live on Victor Street, and I went through all of the agony of the development at the top of Victor Street and everything that's gone on there. And I can provide you, hands-on feedback as to how effective some of the solutions were to solve problems like parking and safety. So on parking and safety, first of all, I agree with the previous person in this meeting that the amount of parking is ridiculous. The whole nature of Stittsville is that it's a driving community. There is not sufficient public transit, and nor is there likely to be public transit to get everybody everywhere they want to go. You really do need a car. It's endemic to the community. It's the way it was designed. It's the way it's grown. And so if you don't have parking, then you've got a whole bunch of people that are going to have to walk down and try to catch a bus, and that's not really effective. If you look at the top of Victor Street, there's a bus stop right on the corner of Victor and Hazeldean. You get maybe about 5 or 6 people out there, waiting for a bus at a time. There's not that much use of public transit. You really do need a car. So in all your plannings, plan for 400 parking spots, one for each owner, and a lot more visitors parking spot. And if you can't do that, you're just going to have a smaller development. In terms of safety, a long time ago, we did the widening of Hazeldean Road into 4 lanes from the original 2. I attended all the planning meetings for that as well. And quite frankly, they blew it a little bit in that the 2 right at the intersection of Hazeldean and Victor Street, if you're on Hazeldean in the left turn lane to turn left into Victor Street, or coming from the west to then turn left to go up to Johnswood Street. Those two left turn lanes are directly facing each other. You can't see around the traffic, okay, that's in those lanes. So you really can't. You can barely see whether you can turn left as to whether the way is clear or not. As a result of that, people then go quickly. So you see an opening and you go, okay, well, I've only got visibility so far up the street because my vision's blocked. So you gun it and you quickly turn left across the traffic, and in my case, down to Victor Street. So when you hit Victor Street, you're already at speed. And to sit there and then have parking spots of all these townhouses that they built up there, where people are coming in and out of there, or you've got the left turn into Denham, it creates a dangerous situation. To sit there and try to solve these problems by saying we're going to calm traffic by implementing traffic calming. I hate that term, okay? Because it's ridiculous. All you do is you try to force everything to be so scary that people slow down by narrowing the road, or you put in bumps, or all these other techniques that quite frankly create a dangerous situation. Yeah, I could get into a lot. First of all, I'm a design engineer. I've designed all kinds of complex systems like this, and I do know what I'm talking about. Okay, with traffic flow, and you've created a dangerous situation. Now, we don't have any traffic calming stuff at Victor Street. Thank God Victor Street's wide. Okay, it's wide enough that you've got some room, but they did pinch it in a little bit at the top there because that's the city standard. Because by making it narrow and more dangerous, it scares people, and that will make it safer. That's the logic, which is ludicrous. So I think you're going to wind up with the same situation, just worse at the top of Savage, okay, with this whole thing, because you do have the curves where you come up Savage and then you have the left curve to get up to Hazeldean. Traffic is going to be moving through there, and people are going to, especially with at Savage, if you don't have a traffic light, as was discussed earlier, then you are going to have people gunning it, because they're going to have to, as traffic increases on Hazeldean with other developments going on in Stittsville, the overall level of traffic is going to increase, and people will be hard pressed for time to make these turns. And you're going to have more situation, and you're going to gun it. And so you hit these subdivisions at speed. And if you suddenly have to brake because somebody, at night, because there's poor visibility and they're walking their dog wearing dark clothes, you've got a dangerous situation. So that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with here at Victor Street. And you've got to be careful about creating a similar situation at the top of Savage, just worse because you're proposing so many more units than was in the Hazeldean Gardens development. So that's parking, but I could go on at length about a whole bunch of other things. Visibility. One thing we've noticed here on Victor Street is a decrease in our water pressure. I've noticed it. Water pressure is definitely down because of the extra demand on the system. And so to say that, there's going to be enough capacity in the system that we can just throw up 400 units, especially when those units are, you've now got to pump the water up. The building's going to have supplementary pumps to pump the water up that extra altitude to just maintain pressure. There's just not enough capacity. So I have similar concerns with sewage. That all has to be, carefully looked at. Here on Victor Street, we had a hell of a problem with the development itself when Hazeldean Gardens went in. The construction, they just parked all up and down the street. And that's why during construction, we got one side of the street to be a no parking zone. It was the only way to sit there and be able to get the cars past, because there was cars parked up on both sides. The same thing is going to happen on Savage, even worse so because of the reduced parking plan. So you're going to have to deal with all of that.
Martin, maybe
That's
if
about
you have,
all I've got for now.
okay. Trying to fit as many people on as we can. Thank you, Martin, for sharing that. And we're making notes of all of this that we'll be compiling for the applicant team. So thanks for your comments.
Okay.
Thank you. Just going back to some of the Q&A panel questions, two similar ones about type of units. One from Shannon, who asks, what is the mix of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom? And then John asks, is it condo or rental apartments?
Sure, I can answer that. So right now it's intended to be rental. Right now there is just no market at all for condos at all. So the intent, but that could change. This is a long-term development, right? So if the market says, maybe these things should be sold as condo units, as actual for sale units, I'm sure the developer will always keep their options open, but right now it's intended to be a rental units. The overall mix is about 55% one bedrooms, about 25% one bedroom dens, 32% two bedrooms, an additional 4% for two bedroom dens. So these are the much larger units, and then just a little over 4% for studios. And that's the mix right now.
Okay.
And it's a preliminary mix right now. Whether it could change, absolutely. But that's a preliminary mix that's in line with what the market is demanding.
Okay, thank you. Whoops. All right, I want to go back to the hands up. David is next on the list. David, you should be able to unmute.
And then maybe we can go to Bill after, because I know he's been patiently waiting.
Yes. David, can you unmute? David Friesen. Okay, let's try going back to Bill. Bill, see if you're able to unmute there. Bill, no, you're unable to unmute. Okay. Okay, next with the hand up is Russell. Russell, I'm going to come back after just because I want to get to folks who haven't asked a question yet. So we'll come back to.
Just one tip though. Maybe it's on a banner. You have to make sure that you click the mic on a banner.
Oh, that's with Q&A.
Okay.
And how does one access the Q&A? Because I don't see it on the screen.
There is a Q&A panel, so it'll be different whether you're on an iPhone or an iPad or a desktop computer, but there should be a link on the screen where you can click on the Q&A panel to activate it. Okay, we're going to try to go to Debbie. Debbie, I'm just going to allow your microphone here. And Debbie, you should be able to unmute.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi. My concern is because of the Hazeldean Road and trying to get out there on any day right now. Like we have 4 lanes, trying to get out there, turning left. People are not confident going into the median. So it takes a long time. And we've got a small community that a lot of us have been here for many years. We've been here for like 45 years. So I don't think that with you guys putting the main structure coming out onto Hazeldean Road is going to help us whatsoever. Like we're going to be like backed up. Yes, because we have one set of lights. Like there was the building on Victor, which was built, but they have a set of lights, so they can deal with it that way. We have nothing. Like you're not going to put another set of lights like 50 feet away from each other. Like, so this is our concern. Like we'll be backed up on Savage Drive trying to get out. And if you see the structure of it coming down on the corner of it, there is a windy road that's coming down. So people coming and going, like there's going to be some precautions on this for sure. So I need to know, like, can we not come on to Savage Drive? Like it has to be something else. Like there's no way that we can deal with this. There's no like sidewalks, nothing. Like it's not a big road to begin with. Like it's not so that has to be thought about as well. Like.
Oh, thanks, Debbie. I don't know if Juan or someone else from the developer team wants to comment on that.
Yeah, I can definitely answer this one. So yeah, thanks for the question. Great question. And Mr. Broadhead, Christina, I forget your first name, but your question was also very good. I definitely understand the perspectives that are being shared. So first of all, I'll touch on the turning lanes that were mentioned earlier. So left turns, I've seen a few of those comments as well. So city always has the power, if they see deemed required, they could fully protect the left turns. This would reduce the this for the Victor and Hazeldean intersection. So they could fully protect it, which then means that the turns would only happen with an arrow and you would not have the conflict with oncoming vehicles. So that's for that particular intersection, but more based on the Savage and Hazeldean, which is a bit of a topic that I've been seeing on the comments as well. So today there is a two-way left turn lane in the middle. This lane actually does offer the opportunity for vehicles to queue on that lane. They don't have an opposing left turn. Oh, I mean, there could be for the minor turning on to the preschool and kinder, for example, or something like that. But there's very few potential for opposing left turns there. So you should have a pretty clear view to be able to turn in and out of Savage. When you're turning out of Savage, if you're turning left, which is forecasted to be a pretty low number of vehicles, specifically turning left out of Savage.
Really? I don't think so. No.
So
no. When there's that many, there's a lot of traffic. It comes and goes. Maybe sometimes you might have a good view, but it could take probably a good 3 to 4 minutes before you're confident. And some of the people are not confident turning left, and they're not even confident going into the median. So this is going to back us up like crazy. Like just
I'll
from
give
the
a bit of a perspective
from come out of there.
Yeah, let's let Juan finish. Go ahead, Juan.
Yeah, so using the industry standards, we've done our trip generation. So it's how many vehicles and trips we forecast to be developed by this development. We're forecasting less than 2 vehicles per minute. That's at the absolute peak hours. That's the heaviest AM peak hour, and the heaviest PM peak hour. Outside of those hours, the traffic volume is going to be far less than that. This based on our modeling. So we've done modeling including the existing traffic volumes that we've gathered from 2025. We have layered on all the other known area developments. We've added background traffic growth to account for additional growth. So we've added all these layers of future traffic growth. And even with all this added, the way the intersection is currently operating would result in approximately 4 to 5 seconds of increased delay for people leaving Savage Road. On Hazeldean Road, there would be insignificant, so unknown, there would be no additional delays on Hazeldean itself. So just before the vehicles exiting and entering Savage Road. As mentioned, it's very, very minimal. And then
how can you say that when you say that there's going to be how many cars coming from there, coming directly out of Savage Drive, and you think that's not going to cause a problem for us to turn left or turn right? Like seriously, like that's a major concern. Like this is just a small industrial, like a small community right here. Like this is like, and all of a sudden you're just putting all this on top of us, like.
I absolutely hear your concern. And as mentioned, we're using the industry standards to calculate what the forecasted trip generation would be. This is used all across the city, and it's actually validated quite often. So we use a new trip generation guideline, which was developed by the City of Ottawa using data directly from Ottawa. So as developments come on, they do their analysis, and they see how many trips were actually developed based on how many units were built. So the data is actually quite accurate in that sense. And all that is inputted into software that we have to validate the data and see what the actual forecasted delays and.
So I have to
all right, so it's not common sense anyway. So anyways, we'll just have to see what happens.
Thanks, Debbie.
I want to know about traffic modeling. Now, let me ask about the traffic modeling.
Yeah,
Did you do the traffic modeling based on the projected number of parking spots, which is like 150 or 200, whatever the number was, or based on the total number of units? Because if you have all those units with cars, that's a very different input than the proposed number of parking spots.
Absolutely, and that's a good question. And yes, we did do it based on the number of units. So it's based on the commercial gross floor area and the number of units.
Okay, thank you, Debbie, for the question. definitely a big concern from residents is around the impact from additional vehicles coming in and out for sure. Let's go to Trish. Trish B is the next person with a hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Trish. Yes, we can.
Hi, I apologize, the lighting isn't great here. So I'm coming from 3 generations of living in Stittsville. So I know that this is a lovely small town, and I recently moved back here from Oshawa. This building looks exactly like the monstrosities from Oshawa, and I don't mean any offense to you, Roberto, or any architect or engineer on this call. I frankly feel that the developers are hiding behind the great architects and engineers on this call, and frankly, even you, Glenn. And this causes major issues for Amber Way with the shading of the building. Amber Way is already a community that is not exactly overly served by our community, and it is trailer park homes, and now you're telling them they're going to have less sun in December. As well, I'd like to see the wind calculations from these buildings due to the curves and the angles that they are at. Also, what I'm really hearing from Roberto is that he was told to max out everything, and that he has not convinced me that it even makes sense to him. And Glenn, you need to stand up for our community for once and say no and fight for us.
I'll let the applicant team respond to that in terms of shadow and wind and the other elements that Trish mentioned.
Like on the aspects of, again, whether it's shadows or traffic, all of this is a requirement that needs to be reviewed and developed reports to meet the standards that are at the end ultimately put forth by the city of Ottawa.
Roberto, I think at this point that we understand that you guys are going for calculations and standards and all this kind of stuff. You still haven't told us the developer behind this. And Glenn, you haven't told us what you're going to do for our community. I understand as architects and engineers, you have a job to do and you're doing it, but that's not what we came here for, frankly, at this stage of 10 minutes left on this call.
Okay, thank you, Trish. Roberto, I'm not sure. I don't think Trish is looking for a specific answer to that. But
no, sure.
Trish, I will say quickly, because I don't want this to be about me. I want this as many residents as we can asking questions. I voted against the development at Hazeldean further west, west of Carp Road, in large part because of the infrastructure concerns. Like I agree with residents that in that case, there was specifically around the timing of Carp Road and the uncertainty around an actual timeline, a realistic timeline to build Carp Road. I agree with residents on issues like Savage Drive, the exit onto Hazeldean Road, the lack of infrastructure and amenities, whether that's city infrastructure around roads and transit, or whether that's provincial infrastructure on things like doctors and schools. Like the province is taking very much a housing first, and the city as well. Housing first, and things will catch up later. But it's having a huge impact on the people that live here. So there's a lot of issues that have been raised. This project hasn't been formally submitted to the city. When we see the final plan, there's clearly a lot of things that we need to address with this. So we're at the very start. Well, I want to say we're not even at the start of the process yet in terms of the work that councillors can do and that residents can do once this is actually submitted formally to the city.
As residents of Savage Drive, we are highly recommending to you, Glenn, that you propose that these buildings at a minimum are half the stories that they are at a minimum.
Okay.
It's not it's not that we're saying no. Is that this is too much, and Roberto's made it very, very clear that this is max to capacity, and frankly, it doesn't make sense. You can hear it in his voice. I'm sorry, Roberto, it's very under the bus, but that's how I genuinely feel.
Okay, so I get this, and I'll be this is me talking on behalf of me as an architect. I do a lot of housing all over the city, whether it's in Centertown, Glebe, places like Maryville Road, Stittsville, Orleans, and this is not an uncommon response, quite frankly. Like, it does happen in no matter what neighborhood. And so, do I believe that housing is important? 100%. And I do believe that everywhere in the city needs to be able to do housing and share in providing housing, because we are, quite frankly, in a housing crisis. We are. There's no questions. We are. I have kids who absolutely will not be able to afford a home. A big part of my retirement is going to be very much about supporting my kids afford a home. This is not a thing that we're making up. We are in a housing crisis, and we need to develop more stuff. And it's going to happen in neighborhoods like this. The city has decided that this is an appropriate place based on the policies that have been created in the official plan and ultimately the new zoning bylaws. And so our role ultimately is, yes, to look at these sites and say, do we think that this site is appropriate for this? And yes, based on the policies, it is 100% appropriate for this, because it's not just this site. It's going to be sites in other areas where, yes, construction and change
Roberto, that's why
is
I
not,
say the
it's
developer
not easy.
and Glenn, our representative, are hiding behind you. I totally respect what you do and all the engineers on this call. I work with architects and engineers every single day. I meet with you guys every single day. I love what you do. But at the end of the day, it should have been the developer and Glenn speaking to us and you guys having 15 minutes to propose what they requested you to do.
I believe in the project. I think that as architects, and at least for our firm, we're not going to shy away from looking at these types of projects, because we know that at the end of the day, housing is going to get built, whether it's through us or through other agencies or firms or other developers. It's going to happen. It's going to happen because the policies are put in place in order to allow it to happen. Our goal ultimately is to use these venues, and again, nothing has been submitted, is to listen to you. And I'm very honest. I am taking tons of notes. I've got everybody's name written down with what their concerns are, because we do actually want to hear from you and ultimately make adjustments if we need to make adjustments. That's ultimately the whole point of this. We have not submitted anything, and doing this as a token ultimately. And maybe that's what some people have felt this becomes, and there's no questions. I'm sure it happens in many cases. That's what it is, but that's not our goal. Ultimately, yes, we are going to be proposing something that in this case, the landowners feel is appropriate, and we are going to try to help them get there within reason, obviously, but also listen to you and listen to everybody who's made comments on this call, and see if we can make adjustments to make sure that we can, try to at least acknowledge some of the concerns that are being met here. There's no questions parking is going to be an issue for discussion between ourselves, the traffic engineer, the planners on the call, and the owner. There's no questions. Clearly it's an issue that we need to address, because they also want ultimately a successful development. And if it's not successful, then they don't win either, right? So we do take these comments seriously, and we're going to try to address as many as we possibly can. With regards to, yes, I know people don't want to hear that, okay, the engineers and all these reports, well, they're just saying what they're saying. But at the end of the day, we go through an onerous review process with the city, from traffic to wind, as you mentioned, to sound, to sewage, and what all of it gets insanely reviewed by city staff and engineers, to the point that it is very onerous in our ability to respond to all of these things. And it's based on the city's required standards that they have established as what is appropriate for any type of development, whether it's a single family home or a high-rise development.
Roberto,
so it's not just us.
I want to stop you there, because we have a lot of other speakers, and we are trying to wrap up by 9. Trish, thank you for your comments and your questions. I want to go next to Lucas. You should be able to unmute, Lucas.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
My question is something that hasn't been raised yet, so just to clarify that, I haven't heard anything about accessibility, like the units and stuff like that. do you envision to be for inclusivity, any of the units to be accessible, like fully accessible, like by accessible bathroom with walk-in shower, and the smaller ones like a 1-bedroom or studio? Because it just, that would be that might, I don't, not to downplay of the concerns of residents I've said right now, but it might include more inclusivity for the surrounding community, please. Yeah.
Sure, I could certainly answer that. So at the very least, no matter what, the Ontario Building Code, which is what ultimately you have to meet in order to get a building permit, and again, that is part of a whole other level of permitting requirements, automatically requires that you provide 15% of your units to be accessible. Okay. So, and that has to be also be divided evenly based on the ratio of unit typologies that you have. So like I gave a bit of a glimpse of the unit kind of mix, whatever, it's 30% of one type, 40% of another, and X amount. So whatever that mix is, your 15% in order to meet the building code has to be divided evenly. So it's not that, okay, we're just going to make all the studios accessible. No, it has to be at the very least evenly spread between 1s, 2s, to 2-bedroom dens, and so forth. That's just any project in the province of Ontario has to meet that requirement when it comes to housing. Knowing on how development is happening over the last few years, I would say 90%, if not more, of development applications are going through CMHC in order to get their financing, because they're the ones who are offering the loans that are much more favorable, clearly, than the banks are at the way the interest rates have been going, and allowing for certain flexible loans. However, it comes with catches. Part, in order to qualify those, in many cases, depending on which point structure you want to go after, will require more stringent accessibility guidelines, to the point of sometimes 25%, 40%, depending on, again, the stringency and that you're chasing as far as the point structure. So that can, and that can really, really change how many accessible units you ultimately can provide, as well as, not that it's necessarily related, but it's accessibility and sustainability. So again, depending on the point structure that you're after, in order to qualify for more favorable rates, you actually have to provide more stuff, whether it's through accessibility, unit counts and percentages, or through a more sustainable building, as far as its energy consumption and its ability to fight climate change. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a balancing act, but I just wanted to make sure I raise it, and that it's brought forward to the attention of the developer. And I understand it's being very like it's a contentious, like, about the market, but I think you need to offer at least a minimum like 10 or 12 3-bedroom. I know it's not popular, but it's you need more of those people that you don't want to have a single family home, but you need to offer at least 12 or 20 3-bedroom, because people may not want to have the hassle of shoveling, but they want to live in an apartment. So you should give those more option like that, even if it's not very popular because it takes more room. But I really encourage you to encourage a little bit more of the 3-bedroom units, please.
Thanks, thanks, Lucas, for raising accessibility. It's a really good question. I want to try going back to David Friesen. If you can unmute.
I think I've unmuted. Can you
there you are. Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay. I was having problems, and actually, I still can't find the question and answer ribbon. But in any event, one of the things, Glenn, that I wanted to raise is when the townhomes. I live on Victor as well, and I just want to emphasize or re-emphasize some of the concerns that Martin had with the Victor and Hazeldean intersection after the townhomes were constructed. And one of the things that I raised this actually to you, I'm looking at an email back in January of 2023, and it was following snowstorms that we had. And as you can appreciate, what happens is that Hazeldean, being a major street, gets cleared first, and so you get this huge rim of snow that blocks Victor Street. And then you have a sidewalk, which I think this development is also going to have, and you have the city crews cleaning the sidewalks and dumping this onto Victor Street. And so you get a really dangerous situation particularly trying to enter into Victor Street from Hazeldean. Quite often, I'm making a left-hand turn when I'm going westbound on Hazeldean to go on to Victor, and I have this mound of snow, and then added to that, I have this rim of snow that blocks the lane, the southbound lane that I'm trying to get into. And if there's a turning car on Victor, it virtually blocks my ability to get onto Victor Street. So what I've done in the past is I anticipate this and I start turning left onto Savage and get to my house via Savage. I don't know if the planners. I know I hear all of these criteria that that Photon uses and has to use, and the planners have to take into account. But there are certain realities that I don't know that the planners even think about, and it's a concern that I have now with 456 units. There's really only two streets going into our neighborhood, being Savage and Hazeldean. Sorry, Savage and Victor, and I just keep thinking about what Martin said earlier about the dangerous aspects of the intersections. And I don't know if this is a question that the Photon people can answer, or this is a question that, Glenn, you can perhaps ask the planning department if they ever take this into consideration. Because yeah, I'm with Martin and probably a lot of other residents in our neighborhood that are sincerely worried about the dangerous aspects of getting in and out of our neighborhood.
Yeah, well, David, I think on the snow clearing, it really is more of a city operations piece. And I think you hit on it at the beginning, which is Hazeldean Road is done first and done frequently. And Savage and Victor are done quite a bit later in the beat. It's even different than John Woods, whereas John Woods is more of a major access road into Bryanston Gate and Fairwinds or Fringewood. We have issues on those streets too, but I do think it's really an operational thing. I know you mentioned 2023. Or was it 2024?
Well,
Anyways,
I hope that was just an example, because it happens all the time. You know, it's just an example. I just think that when you're now adding, 800 people basically, or more in these apartment complexes, and they're all, and there's not going to be any light. It's been established that there's not going to be a light on Savage. So anybody wanting to make a left-hand turn is going to try to drive over to meander over to Victor Street. And with all the snow and whatnot, I don't know. It's going to be an absolute mess, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, no, it's something we need to work on. Like, acknowledge it's been an issue the last few winters. I hope you found it a bit better this year. At least, I don't think we had to do an extra call out to our roads team as often at Victor as we have in previous winters. But definitely something that as Stittsville continues to grow, we need to make sure that snow clearing service is working at a higher level, getting those problem spots cleared, because there's a few like that in the neighborhood for sure. Regardless of whether this development goes forward or when it goes forward, it's an issue that needs to be addressed. So thanks, David, for bringing that forward. There was something that Trish mentioned, and we have had at least one or two questions as well about who the developer or owner is. There's consultants that are representing the owner of this property, the developer. But I was wondering if someone could put in context who the owner is, and the question's come up a few times here.
Councillor, I can take a stab at that if you like.
Okay.
I haven't had a chance to chime in tonight, but my name is Brian Casagrande. I'm a partner with Flow 10 Planning and Design. So the owner is a company. It's Hazeldean Heights, and I'm not in a position to share the names of the owners of the company. But what I can tell you is they're not known for development of this scale. So they will likely partner or potentially sell this property at some point. They may do the low-rise component because they've built development of that nature, but they don't specialize in the high-rise. So you might see them partner with somebody that you're familiar with. You may see them partner with somebody new. We just can't predict that at this point in time, but that will eventually, be obvious once we know it.
Okay, thank you. Going to keep going through people with their hands up. We need to wrap this at 9 o'clock. So I'm going to ask anyone who has their hands up if you can keep your questions brief, and I'll ask the participants to keep the answers brief as well. I'll go to folks who have their hands up, and then we'll go back to our Q&A if there's any leftover questions there. So Anna, you are next with your hand up. If you can unmute and ask your question. Anna? Okay, Anna, we'll try coming back to you. Going to go to Kevin and Gabrielle. Kevin and Gabrielle, if you can unmute and ask your question.
Hi, Glenn. Can you hear us?
Yes, Kevin. Hello.
Hi. So we're on Savage. We've spoke quite a few times, Glenn, on a few different things. First of all, the parking is going to be an issue. That's because the building's too tall. If the building was kept to what the zoning is now, I believe it's about 150 so feet, so say 10, 11 stories. The 250 spots would be just perfect then. The other problem is them actually wanting to exit onto Savage Drive. There's no purpose for them to exit on Savage Drive. The lot, none of those, other than the residents, the commercial lot there, never were supposed to exit onto Savage, only onto Hazeldean. They need to reverse their plan, flip it, have it so only emergency vehicles can get on at Savage, and the residents at those units need to exit onto Hazeldean Road and enter. That will solve 90% of the problems. Shorter buildings, so there's provided parking. If they can't provide more than 250 spots, if they can't provide one spot per unit, then that's their problem. And we should have no retail in that building whatsoever. If they cannot provide parking for retail and for their clients and their customers, there should be no retail allowed in that building. That's my comments. Otherwise, we're going to end up with 1,500 people in that building, possibly up to 1,500 people with the amount of beds that are beds in that building, not knowing where to park and how to get on and off Hazeldean Road. Back to you, Glenn.
Can't hear Glenn.
Oh, I can't hear you, Glenn.
I'm muted. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin, for your comments. We've noted that. Thank you. And Shannon is next on the list. Shannon, if you can unmute and ask your question. Shannon, are you there?
Oh, should be there now.
It looks like you're unmuted, Shannon, but I can't hear you. We'll try to come back to you in a moment, Shannon. Let's go back to Anna. Anna, are you able to unmute and ask your question? No? Okay. We'll try to come back to you in a moment if you can see if you can find that microphone button. John Andrews.
Hey, Glenn, can you hear me?
Hi, John. Yes, we can. How are you?
Hi. I'm very well, thank you. I live on Savage Drive too, and I agree with everything that Kevin and Trish have said. It's too high. It's just ridiculous, and the parking is also ridiculous. I've made over a dozen comments and questions, and I'd just like to get your personal commitment to take all of this product that we've created today, document it for the city, so all the comments, and then have all the questions answered in writing by the developers or by the city so that we can get all the answers, because this one meeting has been very superficial and it doesn't get down to the nuts and bolts that we need to see.
Yeah, so I could say we will be documenting everything and sharing a package with the applicant. Off the top, I'm not sure if you were with us, but this hasn't been formally submitted to the city, so there is no formal proposal. It's pre-application. As we get into that further stage, there's a formal notification that goes out to all neighboring residents and buildings. There's a formal way that you can share comments with the City of Ottawa staff. City of Ottawa staff provide analysis and comments and a summary of all the public feedback. So in that stage, there's a more detailed documentation, I guess, of how any issues have been resolved or not resolved. But definitely as an output of this meeting, we will be providing a summary of all the issues to the applicant, and we usually post that to my website as well, just so people have an idea of what's been asked.
Right, and there are questions within the chat as well. So can those be answered and also posted on your website?
Yeah, so we've been asking some of them as we go here, and we'll try to fit a few more in, and we'll include all of that feedback in that summary.
And this meeting will be properly minuted, correct?
Well, as a summary, we'll be doing all of the questions, and we'll have a summary. It won't be a transcript, but we will have a summary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. Let's go to Lloyd. Lloyd, are you still with us on the call? Okay, let's go to Ken. Ken, are you with us?
I am indeed. Thanks very much.
Hello, Ken.
Hi. I've got 3 points. I'll try and make them brief.
Okay.
With respect to the traffic flow on Savage, I would not underestimate the issues that may arise by introducing the extra flow, especially for retail and so forth, onto Savage. I'm less concerned by people who live in the area, more concerned by visitors. And I can tell you from personal experience, at the exact point where that roadway comes into the development, I was involved in a head-on collision by someone who was not from the area, came whipping onto Savage at excessive speed because they pushed they were a little insecure about doing their left turn, and ended up in the wrong lane. You got that S bend. It's something just to keep in mind. Do not underestimate the impact that the extra traffic flow is going to have. Second point, where is the snow going to go? Looking at the traffic pattern, the roadways, and so on through the development, the only real option I see when snow has to be cleared, other than having a truck parked there permanently to scoop it into, is to push it out onto Savage, because there's nowhere to dump it. If you look at the footprint, there's no sort of real common area, grassy area, what have you, where snow, at least temporarily, could be dumped. My concern is it's all going to end up getting pushed onto Savage. And as residents of the street and the area know, as winter progresses, the road gets narrower and narrower as it's more snow falls, right? And I can remember a winter not too long ago when we were basically down to 1.5, maybe 1.25 lanes total. All right. So now we're going to have that snow is going to have to go somewhere, at least temporarily. Otherwise, the residents in there are just going to be trapped until the snow is cleared and scooped up into a truck. So I've reviewed plans for other developments, and usually there's a common area where snow can be dumped temporarily so that it can then be removed later, but at least the road clearing can be done so that the residents can come and go, right? This doesn't have that unless you consider Savage Drive to be the dump. So the third concern I have is with privacy. Yeah, I know the orientation of the buildings is intended to minimize the level of intrusion, shall we call it, into people's backyards and so on. But many of the homes on Savage there's now going to be a direct sight line, at least from the upper floors, into everyone's backyard. So whereas previously they may have enjoyed, I don't know, gardening in their underwear or whatever, they're probably not going to be able to do that anymore, right? Once these buildings are constructed. Okay, it's 29 stories is a long way up. Okay, so again, I think a shorter development vertically would be better suited to the area, and that's it. That's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you, Ken. Well, on the last two items, the snow and the privacy, Roberto, can you comment on those?
Yeah. So on the snow, certainly on a project like this, the temporary area could be used is that pavered area, but the intention is always to have the snow trucked off on a regular basis. That is ultimately the intent. Major snowfalls, it gets trucked off. It gets plowed and picked up, and it doesn't remain on the property. With regards to privacy, I know that this, and obviously this comes up on projects no matter where we put buildings like this, but the most impactful actually, I guess, privacy aspects actually comes from lower buildings. Actually, it's from buildings that are between 4 stories and 8 stories. That's usually the highest impact of actually like privacy, the concerns for privacy overlook. Once you're at much higher heights, it doesn't really become an issue. I know people think that it actually does because, I automatically can see everybody's backyards and stuff. But really, the most impactful parts are the ones that were near 4 stories to 7 to 8 stories. That's usually where there's a more immediacy of having people overlooking other people's property. I think it's also why we also chose to put a smaller 4-story as a bit of a mediator between the high-rise development parts and the remaining of the existing low-rise neighborhood.
Okay, thanks, Roberto, and thank you, Ken, for your questions. I think Anna, we're going to try to go back to Anna. Anna, I think you've been able to unmute. Let's see if we can hear you.
I think so, yes. Can
Hi.
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, we live on Greer Street, which is at the bottom of both Victor and Savage. And there's also Denham in between. And most people have at least 2, sometimes 3 cars that they use on a regular basis. So in addition to all the other traffic, we are here too. And we're a little concerned about that. And when you go to the lights on Victor, sometimes you have to wait quite a while from them to switch that we can turn off onto go left off of Victor onto Hazeldean.
So you're concerned about with additional traffic, it'd be additional turning time, wait time that you're waiting to turn there. Yeah.
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 Any other comments or questions that you wanted to ask?
Not at the moment. I've heard some other of my questions being answered already. Thank you.
Okay, I'm glad we got that mic working. Thank you very much, Anna. I want to try going back to Shannon to see if Shannon was able to get her mic working. Shannon? Shannon, let's try one more time. See if you can unmute.
Can you hear me?
Ah,
Can you
there
hear
you
me?
are. Perfect. Hi, Shannon. Yes.
Okay, sorry. I had to unmute. I had to download it on my cell phone because my work computer doesn't allow me apparently to have a mic. Anyways, you know, my concern has always been safety around Stittsville. And I know, Roberto, you're taking notes and everything and seeing, I'm assuming the notes from the comments, because I've been reading the comments. And I know it was indicated that there's a crisis of housing here in like Ottawa. Well, I guess all across Canada, but we're talking here, Stittsville. Now I see, like, I'm looking at buildings that are unattended, but it's such the amount of rent is like, it's ridiculous. Nobody's ever going to be able to afford a $2,500 apartment per month, plus, you know, utilities and all that stuff. And more, I'm seeing, what I'm seeing is apartments, you know, are attracting families because obviously maybe they're more affordable. They don't have the, you know, the all the other stuff, like doing landscaping, shoveling, and families. So you're having families go in and schools. Now, Stittsville has a lot of schools here in Stittsville that are way over capacity, i.e. Sacred Heart. You know, we're looking at like 2,400 students, and there's no, you know, there's no sidewalks, there's no infrastructure on that part of it, which is, and so I guess I'm more of a comment of, I really hope if this does get passed by the city that, like, I think the building that high is ridiculous here in Stittsville. Like, Stittsville is a small, and I think a lot of the 92 people that were on here has the same feeling. That is just, these high rises here in like this small little village is ridiculous. But my concern as somebody that lives in Stittsville, that is part of school councils, 2 schools, I see safety. And like in the past 3 weeks, we've had pedestrians hit by 7 pedestrians hit by vehicles. And, you know, now there's not going to be a light at this intersection. We're going to have the construction over 10 years, and we're going to have families in there. We're going to be like, and this is not the only construction that is in Stittsville. There's a lot more construction in Stittsville, and I'm really concerned about the safety of pedestrians and vehicles. But more like the reason why I'm here is for the kids, the students that have to go to Sacred Heart and Paul D and Maplewood without proper access to these locations. I just think it's like 456 units. You're looking at least 800 plus people in these buildings, and on such a small footprint. I just hope the city really thinks about this. And I don't know if the owner of Hazeldean Heights is on here, but I just think it's, you know, look at somewhere that has a bit. I'm not opposed to high rises, but just on this footprint, I think it's just too much. I think I agreed with what Trish said, like 100%. It's just, you know, and also I'm so glad that Lucas brought up such an amazing point about the accessibility, and hoping that you know, that the 15% of units will be accessible as per the building code, because I have yet to see that in other buildings. And accessible parking, you know, Glenn and I have talked about this, you know, accessibility here in Ottawa, like we're the capital of Canada, and it's horrible. So I guess mine's more of a comment, and I really hope that you're looking at just not what people are saying, but all these comments that are coming through on the Q&A comment board. So thank you.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
all.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. And we are keeping a log of those Q&A. And I don't think we're going to have time to get to everything, but thank you for your comments. I'm going to try to go to, Lloyd and then Angelo. And if we have time, Janice, because it's all people who haven't had a chance to speak yet. So Lloyd, I think you've been able to unmute. If you want to go ahead with your question.
Turn.
There you are. Hi, Lloyd.
Yeah, no, it's still not working. Still not working.
I can hear you, Lloyd.
Oh, you can? Well,
yes.
Interesting. Okay, because according to this, my mic is still muted. So that's good.
Well,
anyway,
go ahead.
Yeah, so more comment, but question for Glenn. Like there was the comments about, the snow removal in Victor. And I guess my comment was, I have spoken to the city and I've put in tickets for things like the snow removal. I've asked in a ticket more than once to speak to somebody because like one of the typical things, and I'm assuming it would happen on the sidewalks around this development, the sidewalk plow, as was mentioned, pushes the snow into the street. And then the street plows it back to the sidewalk comes back and plows it back to the street. My question has been, and they never call me back, why are they not pushing the snow of the sidewalk up onto the grass? Like, why are they pushing it into the street? Because like this has been said, different times, you're trying to turn in and Victor's half the lane is gone because the sidewalk plowed the snow into the street. And so my question more to you, Glenn, is how do we actually talk to people about reality on, why can they not redirect the snow elsewhere? And Glenn, too, I've emailed your office different times with questions. The typical answer is, I don't know. And there's no, that's the end of it. It's like, yes, you may not know, your staff person, but aren't you there to find the answer?
Okay.
And I'm just wondering how do we get answers to some of those types of things or have intelligent conversations about a specific issue?
Well, I'm sorry that you haven't been able to connect with someone from the roads department who manages the snow clearing, the operations. But I'll ask if you could send me an email and reference in it that we had this conversation tonight, and I will do my best to set up a call between you and me and someone from our roads department who can answer your questions directly for you and get those answers.
Yes, because maybe there's a very good reason they can't push it up on the grass, but to me, I don't see why they couldn't at least put some snow the other direction,
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up on that.
Okay.
Definitely. Good. Okay, so we're just at 9 o'clock. I want to go to Angelo. Angelo's had his hand up for quite a long time. Thank you, Lloyd, for that question. We'll have our last question from Angelo. Angelo, if you can unmute.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I've got a two-part question, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
The first one is directed to Juan. Something that you can't simulate. I understand you have great computer simulations for traffic, but something that you can't simulate is the people's threshold of patience and emotions. So what I challenge you to do is to get out from behind your computer and go park on Savage Drive at 5 p.m. and try to turn left. And you'll know exactly what everyone's talking about. I live on Harton Street. Glenn, turning left, turning eastbound, I don't even do it. I go over to John Woods to take the traffic light because it's just, you're trying to cross over too many lanes and there's a lot of moving cars. So, like I said, one, trust me, go over to Savage Drive at 5 p.m. and try to turn left onto Hazeldean and you'll know exactly what everyone's talking about. Secondly, and my last point is I have a member in my household that works shift work, So I understand let me back up for a second. I understand the developers have a smaller amount of parking spaces, so clearly they're going to rely on the people that live there to do public transit. Now, I have a member in my household that works shift work. Try to take a bus home on Hazeldean Road after midnight. It doesn't happen. There is none. The 61 stops before midnight. So clearly there has to be, public transit has to be really looked at once again, as far as I'm concerned. That's
Okay.
about it.
Yeah, thank you, Angelo. Those are both good points. A challenge to one and a reminder about obviously not everybody works 9 to 5 and has peak hour trips for sure. We're at past 9 o'clock, and we are going to have to stop. I know we did not get to every single question, but I think we hit most of them. There's one more I wanted to ask because it came up earlier in the Q&A panel, which is around blasting. Sandra and John both had questions about blasting. What's to be expected in the construction on this site? Do you have any information?
I think it would be too early to tell whether blasting is going to be required. I think, and I'll be honest, I'm not a technical engineer to be able to say for all certainty. I think blasting is always one of the last choices to ultimately remove any rock if there is rock underground. But I think the idea ultimately is we get the concerns about the potential for construction. I think the requirement again also as mandated by municipal bylaws is to make sure that things are documented properly ahead of time, to knowing that if there's anything that does affect the neighbors with regards to vibration or dust control, whatever, is ultimately documented properly, and ultimately the goal is to mitigate it.
Yeah. So Roberto, I would encourage you to dig some boreholes because the underlying rock is very shallow at this area of Savage Drive, and there was a lot of blasting at Victor. And this is a big hole.
I would say chances are there will be blasting, but at this point in the process, the extent to that's not clear. Okay, thank you, Roberto, and thank you to everyone for the questions. I'm just going to bring up my screen here.
Just one last thing. When you address the group, can you talk about how many ready-mix trucks are going to come into the neighborhood, and whether, given that it's a 25-story building, there's going to be exemptions to the building times, right? Like normally there's a window in which you can construct. Given this is a major project, are they going to be looking for exemptions?
Okay, so I'd say similar to the blasting, I think it's far too early to anticipate the number of trucks. In terms of working hours, the city's standard construction noise bylaws would be in effect. No matter how big or small the site is, the same restrictions on hours of work are in effect. The only time I've ever seen that change was in the pandemic when the provincial government extended hours. But anyhow, we're back to normal hours now. We do have to wrap up. Thank you for everyone for taking time out of your evening and for your questions and feedback. We didn't get to everything. If there's a pressing question that you would still like an answer on, please email any additional comments to me, glenn.gower@ottawa.ca. As we mentioned earlier, this has not been formally submitted. When there is a formal submission, we'll be posting updated information on my website. There's the address on the screen. You can get that information through my email newsletter. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And I also provide updates through my YouTube channel on a weekly basis. So all of that information is there. I want to thank Jillian and all of the team representing the applicant for answering questions and sharing the information. Thank you to Kara from my office, who's been working behind the scenes, coordinating all the questions and comments coming in. And I hope everyone has a great evening. Take care.